Hi guys, this is chapter 3 of our ChessGoals Classical 1d4 course. Today we are working on the Slav Defense. I'm Matt, this is Jesse. How are you doing today, Jesse?
I am having a great day. How about you?
Good, thanks. I was actually really excited for this chapter. We're both Slav players from the black side on and off, so this will be fun to kind of look at a white system against one of our favorite defenses.
Yeah, for sure. I've played the Slav for my whole chess career for the most part. So interesting to see what we're going to see here to refute it.
Yeah. So the main thing we're going to do in this line is we're going for a quick bishop to g5 in the exchange Slav. So we will be starting out with d4, d5, c4, c6, immediate c takes d back, and now we're recommending 4 bishop to g5. And if you look at the stats here, knight c3 is played 387,000 times at the club level. So almost 400,000 games. Bishop g5, 15,000, 15,000. So a very rare variation. It's the fourth most popular move, but it actually has a little bit of bite to it, and it has some really interesting strategic structures that we can play for. So what system does this remind you of, playing the bishop out early to g5?
It reminds me of a Trompowsky, but I see we don't have C pawns on the board.
Right, and this is an important difference. So in the Trompowsky, that comes with knight f6, bishop g5, and let's just say d5 to try to make it look similar to our Slav structure. Here, after we take, and black takes back with either pawn, the position is about equal. And if we play for a quick c4, black can actually start to try to claim an advantage after d takes c4. But in our line, d4, d5, c4, c6, trading first, and then bishop g5, if an immediate knight f6 is played and we take, white's winning about 63% of these games to 30% for black, and the eval's around 0.3 or 0.4. So we already have something to play for, and you're going to be putting that Slav player in an uncomfortable spot already on the fourth move. Like, they just want to play their solid Slav, but now they got to figure out, well, what is this bishop doing out on g5? Do I need to react any differently to this? It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see some like E6 pre-moves here. We can just snag the queen, so that's going to be good for your bullet game.
Yeah.
So always good to keep that in mind. Another thing I like about this line is if they capture with the e-pawn, we can play knight c3 immediately or after a move or two and really hammer on the isolated d-pawn. So should we look at some lines that we have prepared then?
Yeah, let's jump into it. So we'll
Alrighty.
start with d4, d5, c4, c6, very solid Slav defense. C takes d. The reason we want to take right away is we're limiting the options for black. We're not allowing them to go into a triangle or try different move orders. We're just going straight for Slav exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is our offbeat curveball. Maybe tell us a little bit, Jesse, about like why we like to go with some of these offbeat lines in our repertoires.
Yeah, so I think the main reason is to get the kind of the ball in our court. So a lot of the times in these opening setups, if you can be the first one to play a novelty, you're more than likely going to be the first one. You're more than likely going to know more about the resulting position. So we really hammer on this on the in the Caro-Kann repertoire, where in almost every position we're playing like second or third or fourth best moves that are really good, um, but we'll always have the better idea of the plans and the structure that kind of result from those positions. So same thing here. It looks like a Trompowsky, and if black just allows us a typical Trompowsky knight to be captured, that's not going to be as good of news for them as they might think.
Yeah, and I think we got a lot of positive feedback on our first course, the Caro-Kann course, because people sort of like that we go for these offbeat lines, that we kind of show all the common replies and pitfalls that the opponent could walk into. So we're sticking with that same idea here. We're not going into something that black knows 30 moves of theory and like mainline Slav. We don't want to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with knight c6. This is the main move in the position. And again, in this chapter, like a lot of these d4 course chapters, there are quite a few transpositions because this is not like a sharp gambit line where black has to walk a tightrope. They have different move orders. But this is going to be our main line. and it's going to cover most of the knight f6, bishop takes f6 move orders, and then we'll go back and look at, well, what happens if black doesn't allow us to double those pawns?
Yeah, so knight c3 is going to be our move, just developing a piece. And black is going to now play knight f6. So are we going to capture the knight whenever we're allowed?
Yes. And another cool thing with this line, if you remember our Queen's Gambit Decline chapter, we're going for a similar setup. We actually want to do e3, bishop g3, and probably knight g to e2. Sometimes the knight will come here, but it's sort of a similar setup to what we see in Queen's Gambit Declines. But yeah, back to your question, exactly right. We want to always capture this knight as soon as it's played. We are giving up the bishop pair, but what's happening is after doubling black's pawns, the position is so closed up that our knights are going to look for outposts, and the bishops are going to have hopefully a little bit of trouble finding good squares where they can stay active.
Mm-hmm.
So here,
I like that.
These captures are like almost identical in terms of popularity, 50-50. So let's start with g takes f.
All right, so g takes f. Immediately opening up this this avenue for the bishop. They're more than likely going to fianchetto or double fianchetto. I don't know what that's called. Oops, I skipped ahead. So we'll just play g3, again going to put our bishop here, knight e2. Black can respond. e6 is the most common move here. Oh, I keep scrolling, sorry.
That's okay.
Bishop d3, and we're going to just kind of line up our pieces on good squares.
Yeah, and if you look at this bishop on c8 already, we talk about this all the time. That's one of those small imbalances we can play for. That bishop is trapped behind black's pawn chain. Pawn on e6, pawn on d5. So we're going to try to play against that. And oftentimes what you'll find here is black is going to play f5 and go for this sort of like pawn wall structure. Their dark bishop is a good piece, but their light bishop is not a very good piece. So think about that long term. Let's focus on keeping that bishop bad. And what we're going to do is go with this kind of dark square pawn strategy. Keep the pawns on dark.
Yep, since we have a light square bishop.
Exactly. So how could this game continue?
Well, are we playing g3 also to kind of prevent an f4 move too? Because that looks a bit disturbing.
Yes, that's a really good point. We don't want black to play f4, kind of ruining our pawns, weakening the d4 pawn. That's exactly right.
Yep, so here a good strategic takeaway is if you have light square bishop, you generally want your pawns on dark squares, so your light square bishop has more life, and vice versa. So black plays bishop d6, knight f3 this time for the knight. So why f3 versus e2? Is it because we don't really have this e4 break in the works?
That's exactly right, yeah. So the knight's going to just be a little bit more centralized here, kind of keeping an eye on this e5 square, because our opponent may even go for e5, trying to open things up. So we'll keep the knight here for now. Castle, castle, and now we have this plan. The knight on c3 going to e2, and then to f4. We'll probably put the queen on d2 to connect the rooks, and then we still have this open c file to play with. So we're going to do something like rook c1, probably even expand a little bit queenside, and just play very positionally here, knowing that black has this bad c8 bishop pretty much for the rest of the game. So unless they're going to make some kind of crazy sacrifices, we're just going to play this in a very strategic manner. And toggling on the engine, we're sitting at like a 0.3, maybe 0.4 advantage. So just a comfortable slight edge that we play at a very low risk position, and we can try to outplay the opponent.